All right, let's jump right into it. Today we're decoding the dark forces that create our favorite fictional serial killers. Welcome to The Explainer, where we're going to move way past the blood and gore, and instead look at the intense psychology behind the monsters on our screens. We're going to analyze how entirely different cultures frame the origins of absolute violence.
We're opening with a massive question here. Are the monsters on our screens born evil, or are they just completely broken by a world that failed them? I mean, are they born with this inherent biological drive toward cruelty, or are they carefully constructed by unresolved childhood traumas and total societal abandonment? That right there is the core of our exploration today.
To make sense of all this, here's our roadmap. We'll hit born evil or broken, the architecture of trauma, the making of an Asura, Western pathology versus Indian myth, and wrap up with society's role in monstrosity. Let's start right off with Section 1, Born Evil or Broken, the allure of the villain. Now, you might be wondering why we're so drawn to these horrible characters in the first place. Well, it comes down to this really fascinating concept called perverse allegiance. It explains exactly why audiences are just so captivated by horrific figures like Hannibal Lecter. This absolutely does not mean we justify their evil. Rather, it means we actually find a dark gratification in their intellect and in their complete refusal to play by society's rules. It forces us to question our own moral boundaries, especially when we find ourselves captivated by or even rooting for the very architect of our nightmares.
Moving right along to our clinical case files in Section 2, the architecture of trauma, looking at Lecter and Gum.
This chilling methodology perfectly illustrates Jane Gum's repetition compulsion. Essentially, this is a psychological urge to recreate his trauma over and over again. Gum, who you probably know as Buffalo Bill, doesn't just act out randomly. No, he lures victims by faking helplessness, confines them, starves them to loosen their skin, and ultimately skins them. It's horrible, but this highly structured sadism is actually his way of dealing with the fact that he was abandoned by his mother at a very young age, suffering this constant rejection that totally fractured his psyche.
So, the crucial point we need to understand is that Gum isn't just some random aberration. He is literally a mosaic of institutional rejection who reduces human beings to mere skins. Psychoanalytically, he suffers from a failure in what Jacques Lacan calls the mirror stage. You know, that critical moment in infancy when we first recognize ourselves and form a complete identity. Gum never got that. Because he can't find a place within traditional gender binaries, and because medical institutions repeatedly denied his requests for surgery, his extreme violence becomes a horrific attempt to literally stitch a brand new identity together from the bodies of others.
But then, in stark contrast, you have Hannibal Lecter. He asserts an absolute, terrifying autonomy. As you can see, he completely rejects the idea that his cannibalism is just a byproduct of his traumatic past during World War II. His brilliance, and honestly his horror, lies in exactly how he alienates himself from his own pain. He chooses instead to meticulously punish those who disrupt his personal, albeit highly twisted sense of order.
Let's shift gears and apply a completely different cultural lens to the Indian web series Asur, in Section 3, The Making of an Asura, Shubh Joshi. Let's track the tragic descent of Shubh Joshi. He was a prodigious child whose toxic labeling and ongoing abuse turned a supposedly bad astrological omen into a literal self-fulfilling prophecy. Born into a Brahmin family, his mother tragically dies in childbirth. Because his birth aligns with an inauspicious astrological constellation, his very own father brands him an Asur, a demon. And guys, this isn't just a single traumatic event. It's a daily, ongoing emotional slaughter. It all culminates in Shubh committing parricide, murdering his own father, on the river during a ritual, stepping fully into that demonic identity society forced upon him, and eventually orchestrating mass murders based on Vedic myths.
Shubh's visceral monologue here, which translates to "endless darkness is the ultimate truth," shows exactly how an intellectually gifted child learns that intimacy is virtually indistinguishable from harm. He says attachment is pain, compassion is cruelty, and every ending is a new beginning. I mean, think about it. When your own father beats you for being a bad omen, you don't just learn to hate yourself. You learn that the entire cosmos is rigged against you. Shubh weaponizes his intellect to claim power over the very society that shamed him.
And this ongoing cycle of trauma, it leaves absolutely everyone trapped. By the Season 1 finale, the system has completely broken down. We see the horrific fallout of Shubh's actions tearing the protagonists apart. The veteran detective, DJ, is suspended from duty. His former protege, Nakil, is left utterly broken, blaming DJ for the collateral damage that occurred all because DJ didn't listen to him a decade prior. And the season ends with this devastating cliffhanger as Rasul takes Nikil away. It perfectly illustrates how institutional failure just ripples outward, destroying the exact people trying to hold the line.
Which brings us to a truly fascinating cultural clash in Section 4, Western Pathology versus Indian Myth, Framing the Monster.
This comparison brilliantly illustrates the divide between these two storytelling traditions. It's night and day. Western narratives like The Silence of the Lambs rely heavily on clinical pathology. We're talking psychiatric evaluations, biological drives, and diagnoses straight out of the DSM.
But Asur?
Asur frames the exact same psychopathy through a metaphysical lens. Shubh's violence is debated not as some chemical imbalance, but as a potential karmic destiny, or the result of astrological stigma. It completely shifts the nature versus nurture debate into a deeply spiritual context.
Ultimately, we have to look past the individual killers and investigate the environments that incubated them. This leads us to our final stop. Section 5, Society's Role in Monstrosity, Institutions and Complicity.
Because as academic deconstruction points out, these narratives are really a rigorous critique of how our own institutions, whether that's a psychiatric ward or a patriarchal family, can literally manufacture monsters. It is a complete biopsychosocial failure. That means biology, psychology, and the social environment all collapsing at once. These killers are dark reflections of the societies that produce them. Buffalo Bill is the tragic consequence of a society that pathologizes nonconformity and abandons its suffering youth. Shubh Joshi is the direct result of rigid caste hierarchies and incredibly toxic parental beliefs. The true horror isn't just what these killers do, it's how complicit our systems are in shaping them.
And you know what? Even the heroes aren't spared. Both Clarice Starling and Dhananjay Rajpoot, DJ, have to navigate deeply flawed patriarchal systems while wrestling with their own unresolved traumas to hunt their targets. Clarice has to constantly prove her worth in this heavily male-dominated hierarchy that looks at her as an object way before they see her as a legitimate agent of the law. Meanwhile, DJ is fighting his own internal demons, numbing his pain with alcohol while desperately searching for spiritual moksha, or ultimate liberation. The irony is, the very institutions designed to hunt monsters often end up traumatizing their own protectors.
So, what should you really take away from this explainer? It's that the nature versus nurture debate isn't just some fun intellectual exercise. It is an urgent ethical call for real intervention. If we want fewer tragic figures like Shubh or Jamin Gum in the real world, we need to fundamentally shift our cultural values. We absolutely must move away from systems that prioritize ruthless competition, rigid gender norms, and obsessive family honor. Instead, we need to build frameworks that offer genuine trauma-informed healing and early intervention for vulnerable individuals.
I want to leave you with this deeply unsettling thought, inspired by Lecter's final letter. It forces us to ask, is the monster really just someone out there, or is it something within us all? Lecter casually tells Clarice that the world is simply more interesting with her in it. It's such a haunting farewell because it challenges us to accept that humanity is capable of both immense innocence and absolute cruelty, often existing simultaneously in the same person. The monster isn't just a biological anomaly, right? It's a mirror reflecting our collective failures. Until next time, keep questioning the narratives around you.